Good morning, everybody. Thanks for joining, and thanks for having me. Very interesting presentation as well, Chris. Thank you. Also from General Badia. Thank you. I'm going to share a bit of history from myself as well. I was actually also in one of the NATO missions back in mid-90s. I started my career in security as a military police officer, not because I wanted to work with security, but to be honest, because I didn't know what else to do. I was one of those guys that had lived a life of a lot of different challenges, tried a lot of different things and failed miserably, and I decided that there was only one way out of this, and this was military discipline. So apparently, military police was exactly that, a lot of discipline. So I started in the 90s in the military police, and they asked, when you're good at a few of the elements in the military police, they always ask you to be even better, to improve yourself continuously. So I ended up being a bodyguard team leader in Bosnia. Had a lot of fun with that, if you can call it fun in those theaters. But it also guided me towards my future in security. At that time, it was about securing people, making sure people were safe. And I realized that's my ambition in life. I want to make people safe. I want to make people feel secure. And since I was also a bit of a tech geek at the time, I was trying to hack away at everything I could touch. I dismantled electronic equipment every time I had the chance to do so. I didn't always put it back together in the right order, but I definitely had fun with it. That sort of led to me being part of the defense IT organization and working with the government, and unfortunately also helping to create a lot of the complexity that you guys are suffering from today. So my apologies for that. I spent close to actually more than 2 decades in the defense and government side of things, working with communication security and cryptographic security and all of that. Before I joined Maersk, in the wake of NotPetya, they definitely realized that with the NotPetya incident in June 2017, that cybersecurity is a thing. This is something we need to take serious. And I'll share a bit of insights from there as well throughout this speech. But one of the first things I learned was you have to ask questions. You have to be curious, right? Because when I joined Maersk, the first thing I saw was this nice compliance checklist, a piece of paper that very clearly said we're in control. We've learned a lot of stuff from an incident that took out all IT infrastructure. All our incident response processes were dead in the water because they were based on technology. They're based on IT systems. All our backup communication channels were down because they were software-based. Voice over IP did not work when you have virtualized voice over IP PBX systems, right, that runs it. So there are no backup communication channels. So they learned a lot of things, and I saw that compliance check sheet, and I immediately said, no, I don't believe it. No one has green check marks all the way down 6 months after an incident that significant. I simply don't believe it. So I started questioning, and I said, okay, so how do you enforce your security policies? I can see they're written, I can see they're signed by the executive team, but how do you enforce it? And said, what do you mean by enforcement? Good. Now we're starting to talk. I'll come back to a few of those stories, but that was sort of what led me on to asking questions is important, right? Today I'm going to talk a bit about cybersecurity meets reality, but first, I got to have at least one slide that says a bit of marketing. So for those of you that don't know Palo Alto Networks, I've been there for 2 years now, and one of the reasons why I joined I call it the dark side, apologies for that, but I always swore that I would never join like a vendor side of things. I would always work for an organization. But then they offered me the opportunity to help a lot of organizations, and I said, yes, that's what I want to do. So I joined 2 years ago because I believe in the vision and I believe in the mission of making each day safer and more secure than the day before. And in Palo Alto Networks, that is done through 3 technology platforms, from a network security perspective, cloud security, and security operations perspective. And then, of course, underpinning everything is the threat intelligence that most of you probably know from our Unit 42 already. I'm not going to be talking about that today, though. I'm going to share a bit of insight, not just the relevant threat landscape and all of that. Everybody expects when you work for a cybersecurity organization, you're going to come with a big wolf cries, right? All the scare tactics and everything. I don't really like that, but everybody here understands, of course, that cybersecurity risks are expanding. Whether we look at the attack surface that is growing from devices we use, from the data we aggregate, from the connectivity we all desire and require, or the data overload in itself expands on the risk, right? The anywhere workforce, we've just had a little talk about that as well. The supply chain and third-party disruption, and the regulatory compliance, of course. So I'll add another source for you. And even though it's not all from military organizations or political organizations, we asked 1,300 executives about what's next. What are their challenges and what are they doing with it? So I'll share a bit of that insight with you. And I think the PDF of this slide deck will be shared with all of you afterwards as well. But the QR code is here. So as I said, the top 3 cybersecurity challenges are here. Difficulty of data management, security, being left behind, changes in the tech stack, and the lack of skilled cyber professionals. All topics have already been touched several times throughout this conference. Right. If you look at the threats that the organizations are most concerned about, well, it varies a bit, but not much, right? Everybody has DDoS attacks these days, right? Because that happens a lot. If I look at the digital initiatives that are being run in these organizations, there's a lot of different, I like these phrases, right? It's a lot of buzz, hype, and a bit of fuzziness to it. Nobody really knows what it is unless you write the words yourself. Then you have a pretty good idea about it. But if I tell someone that, yeah, one of my big projects is data analytics, and people would go, okay, what is data analytics to you? Could be a lot of things, right? Or innovate with emerging technology. I love that as well, right? I'm not going to be talking too much about that. I'm going to talk about the outcome of digital initiatives, having a lot of digital ambitions and a reality that's not keeping pace with it, as touched by Chris already. Right? So when you look at how a CISO would look at all of those digital initiatives, a CISO will add a lot of projects on top of it. Because, okay, if you want to talk about improving business intelligence, I need data security, application security, I need some sort of identity and access management as well. And you just start adding to the workload that you're already having, right? Before I come back to that, I want to share with you some of the challenges that I see. The benefit of my role is I have the opportunity to work with the largest organizations in the region. So both in private, but also in public sector. I work with a lot of different governments as well and military entities, and that creates a lot of insights. And I will share with you the top 5 challenges that I meet out there. And if I can get everybody to raise their hand if they think cybersecurity is their number 1 challenge in the organization, when I mention cybersecurity out there, how many people in here think that cybersecurity is the number 1 challenge? No one. 1. Cybersecurity is not the number 1 challenge anymore, unfortunately. I would like it to be. But in reality, the very first challenge that they're faced with is the way they think. Everybody is on the journey towards, you can call it whatever you want. I call it zero trust. Again, it's been around for so long. We can't really call it a buzz or a hype anymore because I think everybody sort of have a position on what zero trust is. To me, it's boiled down to a few principles, but that's what every organization wants to do. Connect every type of user wherever they are to any resource they might have or need, right? And they want to do that with a consistent end user experience. That proves both security, stability, predictability, all of that. That's what every organization wants to do, right? But as I said, there's a legacy thinking, the mindset in organization that is holding them back from achieving that. Whether it's the silos that you work in, the rigid processes you might have, inconsistency in policies, the unclear roles and responsibilities. One of the first questions I asked in Maersk was, who owns technology? So that's easy, that's the CIO, great. Let's go out on an oil rig, and I pointed at a system and said, who owns that one? There was a technician saying, I think that's me. No one wanted to own it, right? On an oil rig today, there's about 30 different operational technology systems, by the way. They're all delivered by different suppliers. Some might come from the same supplier, but different branches of that supplier. And the owner of the rig is not in control of that system. Talk about complexity in a technology ecosystem when you have a ton of those oil rigs operating globally. So the legacy mindset is the number one challenge out there, and scattered ownership as well. The number two is exponentially growing attack surfaces. I already mentioned devices and applications and data and all that. But there's another challenge to the expanding attack surface. New generations. Have you paused and looked at how younger generations than myself, when I look at I have 2 teenage daughters, right? When I look at how they work, it's very different from me. I come from that military thinking, from the corporate world of having a corporate device. This is my primary working device. And then I look at my 19-year-old daughter, and she's, Dad, you're still using a laptop? How old are you? Come on. Everything on the phone, right? Everything. They can't access from their primary device. They're not using it. They asked me to switch banks because there were limitations in the app on the phone. That's their loyalty as well. But what it means from an attack surface is also, and I don't know if you have seen Gartner did a survey, I think 2 years ago now, around strong cybersecurity culture versus weak cybersecurity culture. Even in an organization with a very strong cybersecurity culture, 1 in every 5 employees would try to circumvent the security measures in the organization to reach their own performance targets. People are thinking different today in terms of connectivity and availability, reaching personal targets, and that expands our attack surface as well. It opens up the doors and gives opportunities for those that are looking for those, right? Now, the third challenge here is the Frankenstein model. This is where you take a lot of different components and you try to bring them together, right? In cybersecurity, we've been doing that for 25 to 30 years. Every time there's a challenge, I have a fix for that. Here you go. Plug this in. You're good to go, right? Oh, there's a virus. Okay, here's an antivirus program. Run that. Works. Great. Try to fix the world by adding more challenges and adding more complexity. And in the end, if you're really, really good at driving your own integrations and managing that jigsaw puzzle, you might be able to make your Frankenstein walk and talk. But I promise you, you will never make it sing and dance. Then, okay, granted, Skynet is not here yet. There's probably been a lot of talk about AI already. Quantum is being mentioned as well. But the one thing I see is the way that our adversaries, the cyber adversaries, are thinking is different. Do you know why they want to do a lot of automation? Because it's easier for them. Make one thing right the first time, automate on it, and win multiple times. That's their thinking, right? When they breach an organization as a traditional cyber criminal, they don't extract all the data to force you into paying a ransom. No, they apply automated data analytics. So they know exactly what data is relevant for your organization, what could potentially have the most value for your organization. And then they try to extort you afterwards, right? They're automating in so many ways. And then there's the cybersecurity Darwinismus. Whether that's a new thing, new phrase or not, I think the notion around it is definitely new for some. This is where I talk about when you have digital ambitions that is increasing over time, both with funding, with the initiatives, with the thinking from the executive teams, the top management of any organization are thinking about digital. Because if you're not, you're losing, right? We live in a digital world. We have to be there. The challenge comes with an increase in digital ambitions and you're flatlining your capabilities to secure it, that will, over time, create a very significant gap if it's not there already. So every time there's an initiative, every time there's an ambition that touches digital in any way, security will have to go with it, right? Security by default, security by design. Maybe those are even bad phrases as well, because security should not be something we talk about in the afterpath, right? It should be an ingrained part of it. So I said I will come back to this, where we have whatever CIO digital initiatives on the list, we add all the CISO cybersecurity projects that come out of it, and then we could add all of the different tools that is required to support that, right? Now it goes crazy, right? On average, in the survey, we found that the typical industry approach requires 12 to 15-point products per initiative. We're doing something wrong. We continue to talk about the lack of skilled professionals. Why do we then give them the challenge of this? Imagine hiring a new one. I've done that numerous times, trying to hire a SOC analyst and telling them, okay, by the way, you have to be an expert on this system, 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 this, I'm coming back, this system. It's not going to happen. It's impossible. So we have to rethink, right? We know that we have to go through a cybersecurity transformation. So I'll give you some priorities here. I strongly believe if you want to enable the organization to support the mission drivers and to deliver on digital ambitions, you could ask yourself the question of, should your legacy mindset reduce your toolbox for transformation? Or should you instead be focusing on challenging the legacy mindset, reducing the attack surface, consolidation of your toolbox, architect for automation, and secure the transformation, right? And one way of doing that is shifting the mindset. Let's start there. So I'll give you a few new things to think about. If I look at how a security operations center is structured around the analyst, this triangle represents time spent. The analyst spends a lot of time on analyzing all of the telemetry that is gathered from whatever technology solutions or the threat intel feed, whatever it might be, whether you drive an inside-out or an outside-in strategy from a cybersecurity perspective, the analyst spends a lot of time figuring out what is worth to detect, investigate, and respond to. Do the correlation on all of that. And then on top of that, you realize there's a potential for some level of analytics on top. You can apply AI to some extent. It's not really AI, right? But machine learning at least on top. And then you can automate on top of those machine learning models. There are things that are repeatedly a challenge for the organization. Why not automate the response to that? I think this is wrong, right? I think we need to flip that around and say the majority of time is spent on the automation part. The correlation of data, the stitching of a story, the enrichment of the information, making it real, intelligent. And then we apply the analytics on top of it via the new technologies that is available to us. And we will let the machinery decide, initially at least, what should we detect, investigate, and respond to. So we simplify everything and we reduce the time required for an analyst to sit and look at the everyday stuff. So I'll give you one more thing. How many in here know the CIA triad? Good. The other one is mine. Right? The CIA triad appeared around 1998. That one appeared around now. I did it the day before yesterday. And I'll tell you why I did it this way. The legacy thinking keeps us stuck in the same patterns, right? If you look at the CIA triad, this was a tool to have conversations around what priorities do we have in terms of confidentiality, integrity, or availability. We live in a new world than we did in the 90s, right? Today, availability is essential. If you don't have availability, you have nothing, right? So availability surrounds everything. And then you might have a balance inside of confidentiality and integrity, right? So to me, it's all about challenging the way we think about things. Stop doing more of what we've been doing for the past 25 to 30 years. Just open the news. It clearly does not work. There's an increase in software vulnerabilities. It's ramping up. There's an increase in the exploitation of those software vulnerabilities. There's an increase in how many people are exploiting those vulnerabilities for either financial gain or whatever politics they're into, right? There's an increase in all areas. And what do? We continue to increase our complexity. We continue to look for point fixes. Hey, there's a challenge. I'll stuff something in there. It will fit. So I encourage everybody to be bold and change with purpose. Embrace the technologies that is available out there and enable you to secure the way forward. Right? You might know this box as well, the shape sorter, I think it's called. I hope I'm not clicking way too forward. No, there. First appeared in the 1930s. We're still trying to do the same thing. We're still trying to pick up a square block and put it into the square hole. We're thinking a lot about how we get all the shapes sorted and then have everything in the box. Well, interestingly enough, our adversaries are both inside the box and outside the box, but none of them are looking at the shapes, they're looking at the holes, right? Maybe we should too. Maybe we should even open the box and just say, there's a few things in there we can use. There's also a lot of things in there we don't need. So think about how you can put together a simplified strategy when it comes to technology. Challenge the legacy thinking. If you're still thinking in triangles and squares and those shapes, I understand it. We've been doing it for more than 90 years. Could be time to move on, right? So simplify your technology landscape. This is going to be my number one takeaway for you. If simplification is not part of any technology strategy, any digital ambition, you're slowly losing. It'll take you time to find out that you are losing, but you are, for sure. Added complexity have never helped anyone. Challenge your legacy mindset. Every time you go into the conversation around whether it's digital transformation, even interoperability, ask the questions. Is this really the right way to do this? Are we doing exactly the same thing we did 10 years ago now? And as I said, I might have helped you to the complexity you have today. As I was running the National Crypto Management Center in Denmark for the Danish Defense, I was running all the classified environments. And I think I can share in this room that there was a lot of classified environments, different environments, purpose-built, right? I know a lot of you recognize this. Here's a system, purpose-built, has exactly the same services as this one, which is purpose-built. Just change small letters in the acronym, call it something else. Then we just block them up and have them all next to each other, right? Is this really the right way to go? Probably not. Maybe system and network segmentation isn't the right thing anymore. Maybe we should start focusing around data segmentation instead. So challenge the legacy mindset and automate that security toolbox. You're not going to get the amount of security professionals you need. Have you ever heard an organization say, hey, by the way, I have a surplus of cybersecurity professionals. Anyone want some? No, it's always the other way around, right? So you have to automate. And when I say automate, it's not just about reducing the amount of talent and skills that you need right now, but also for the future. But it drives efficiency, right? So think about when you automate for operational efficiency, everybody who's been working with technology or have touched technology have looked at automation for a long time. We called it different things. In the beginning, we called it scripting. Then we called it RPA or robotics or whatever. It's automation, right? If we can automate, we can reduce the workloads for the most important resource we have, the people and their minds. So simplify your technology landscape, challenge your legacy mindsets, and automate your security toolbox, which then, funny enough, illustrated by the colors, will also simplify your security toolbox, right? That will be my takeaway for you. Questions? There's a question.
Thank you for a very good presentation. My name is Jaan Priisola, and I'm working for George Mason University. And my question is about planning. Now, we heard actually that this planning is wonderful 7 years, 5-step process. It means actually that we have to have the assumption from the 10 years to 20 years. Where will be cyber domain in 20 years? What kind of assumptions can be used there?
Oh, that's a good question. So first of all, I will share with you how I would illustrate like a technology strategy. So if you look around at cybersecurity as sort of a technology landscape, that's going to be the easy way, and then I'll come back to the answer. The way I illustrate it is, I will most likely know the technology that's available to me for the first 12 months. So that can be illustrated by one fixed line. What happens after those 12 months is new technology will come in, right? New emerging capabilities will appear, and that might influence how I look at cybersecurity and what I do with cybersecurity. So the line starts out by being fixed, and then it starts fluctuating quite a bit, because I can't predict that. If you make a cybersecurity strategy based on technology that goes 3 to 5 years into the future, that line is going to be fluctuating quite a bit. There is no way you will predict what will come out from the innovative minds that organizations such as the one Chris represents in Fortinet or Palo Alto Networks or whoever that might be. We spend a lot of money on innovation, trying to figure out what the next step is. So there's no way you can predict what the technology capabilities are. So if you think cybersecurity is founded or based on technology, no, so technology is an enabler for your cybersecurity efforts. So cybersecurity to me is about the mindset. Cybersecurity is not an add-on. Cybersecurity is, and we talked about that as well today, part of every other theater that you operate in. It's in every ecosystem that you touch from a digital angle. It's in every bit of your life moving forward, right? So cybersecurity in the future has to be that. It has to be something we, by default, are thinking about. Everybody, not just us in this room. So I think the future of cybersecurity and some of the things we need to plan in when we talk about people, this is about education. When I look at my daughters and I ask them, they like social media. I think that's not just a girls thing, but they're definitely in the scope for a lot of social media, right? My 19-year-old, I asked her the other day and I said, what do you think about cybersecurity? And she said, I think it's boring. Okay, thank you. But then she said, but I also think it's quite necessary. I have concerns. I don't know if you know this, but Snapchat just recently enabled an AI feature as well, so youngsters can chat with an AI function. And the first thing she said to me said, Dad, this is creepy. I have no idea what happens with the data I feed it. That's the level of education we need to be at a very young age, that they start questioning whatever new tech is out there. How are the data being leveraged? Is it only for you? Might there be something else behind it, right? And by the way, who is that someone else? It was a bit of a fluffy answer, but I think that's where cybersecurity should be headed. It should be an ingrained part of our way of life and how we think. From a technology perspective, oh boy, you haven't seen anything yet. It's going to be amazing. I'll happily take you through that journey. Then you go to the stand and we'll talk more. Any other questions?
It doesn't seem to be the case, but for me, Jesper Olsen has always been associated with football. Now it's been associated with something else as well.
I hope I did
you.
better than Jesper Olsen is known for in football, sorry.
So thank you, Jesper, for a very thought-provoking, interesting, inspiring keynote. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thanks. Thank you.